Imagine a world where one of the deadliest conflicts in human history never occurred. There would be no Holocaust, no atomic bomb, no Allied invasion of Normandy, no rise of Hitler, no attack on Pearl Harbor, and no Cold War. It's difficult to envision such a reality because World War II was more than just a war. It was a force that shaped the world. It altered borders, transformed minds, impacted economies, and influenced ideologies, essentially reshaping everything. But let's challenge history and imagine, what if World War II never happened? This thought experiment isn't merely about erasing a tragedy. It's about unraveling the very threads of the modern world to explore what else might have emerged in its place. Let's begin. To understand how to erase the impact of World War II, we must start with the aftermath of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. Germany, humiliated and burdened with harsh reparations, became a breeding ground for resentment and nationalism. This environment paved the way for Hitler's rise to power. But what if the Allies had chosen a different approach? What if Germany had been reintegrated into the European system with dignity? What if its economy had been supported instead of devastated? In this alternate version of history, the Weimar Republic does not collapse. There is no hyperinflation crisis, no desperate population seeking extreme solutions, and most importantly, no Adolf Hitler rising to power through a message of fear and vengeance. Without Hitler, the Nazi Party remains a fringe movement. Although anti-Semitism still tragically exists in the world, it never escalates to the level of institutionalized genocide. As a result, there's no invasion of Poland, no Axis powers, and no World War II. But that's just the beginning. Without World War II, millions of lives would not have been lost. However, millions of other realities would also never have unfolded. The United States would not become the world's dominant superpower in the same way. The Soviet Union would not surge into Eastern Europe, which would ultimately prevent the Cold War. Japan would not have bombed Pearl Harbor, which means the US might never have dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Without the war, the United Nations may never have been formed. The European Union, created in the spirit of peace and cooperation following widespread destruction, likely wouldn't exist. In this scenario, the Marshall Plan never happens, and Europe's post-war recovery does not lead to a global economic boom. Instead, Europe remains a fragmented landscape of weakened rival nations. What about technology? Consider all the wartime inventions such as radar, jet engines, nuclear energy, mass production of penicillin, and even early computers. All of these advancements were accelerated by war. Without conflict, many of our greatest technological leaps would be delayed by decades. While no war means no destruction, it also signifies a lack of urgent innovation. In this alternate timeline, the world is spared the horror of the Holocaust, which claimed the lives of 6 million Jews, as well as Romani people, disabled individuals, and political prisoners, and did not perish in the industrial machinery of genocide. Without that atrocity, several significant events might never occur, and the world does not learn the crucial lessons needed to prevent similar tragedies. The concept of never again fails to establish itself as a global moral foundation. Consequently, international laws regarding genocide, war crimes, and human rights develop much more slowly, if at all. The State of Israel, born from the urgent response to the Holocaust, may never be established in 1948, dramatically altering the entire landscape of the Middle East. Additionally, the struggle for civil rights in America may also be impacted. Many black soldiers who served in World War II returned home with a strong demand for change. Without the war, that momentum might not spark the civil rights movement as we recognize it today. World War II divided the globe into East and West, marking the distinction between capitalism and communism, with the United States opposing the Soviet Union. However, in this alternative timeline, There is no Nazi threat to unite America and the USSR, nor is there a post-war division of Europe to drive them apart again. Does this mean the Cold War never happens? Perhaps, but it could also unfold differently. The ideological tensions would still remain. The Soviet Union continues to be vast and revolutionary, while the US remains capitalist and increasingly influential. Instead of a Cold War stemming from post-World War II power struggles, we might witness a conflict driven by competition over resources, technology, and influence in Asia or the Middle East. The arms race may still take place, but perhaps later. Nuclear weapons might still be developed, but without the urgency brought on by the war, the first test could occur, not in 1945, but rather in the 1960s. If World War II had not occurred, the United States likely would not have integrated its military as early. Black soldiers would not return from the war advocating for full citizenship. Women who joined the workforce in large numbers during the war might revert to traditional domestic roles without the accompanying cultural shift. As a result, movements for feminist and civil rights, as well as changes in American identity, could all be postponed. This would lead to a world that changes more slowly, neither necessarily better nor worse, but certainly different. There's another layer to this alternate history that we must consider. While World War II might not occur, it doesn't mean the world will remain peaceful. Instead, there could be a conflict between the USSR and China in the 1940s. Additionally, British and French colonial empires might hold on longer, resulting in more violent revolutions across Africa and Asia. A lingering Great Depression could extend into the 1950s, breeding extremism in different regions. In other words, removing World War II doesn't guarantee peace. It simply changes where violence erupts and what form it takes. Imagine waking up in an alternate version of 2025. In this world, there is no United Nations, no European Union, and no global superpower known as America. The Cold War is absent and nuclear bombs have yet to exist. There are no Holocaust memorials, and Israel is not as we know it today. The space race never happened, so there was no moon landing. Or perhaps it occurred much later than in our timeline. Civil rights have been delayed, technology is lagging behind, and while history is unscarred, it is also unshaped. There's no straightforward answer. Without World War II, millions of lives are saved, but those millions never become who they ultimately became. Nations aren't destroyed, but they also don't experience rebirth. Technological progress slows down, but perhaps we develop in different ways. This illustrates the power of imagining what never happened. It's not just about fantasizing, it's about recognizing how much our world is shaped by both triumph and tragedy. If you found this exploration thought-provoking, eye-opening, or haunting in any way, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us as we continue to explore the world that might have been. Sometimes, understanding what never happened is the key to comprehending what did.